How is it going, YouTube? I wanted to make a video with this list that I've been messing around with. If you have seen my content lately, I've been just like jamming Oko into every deck, and this also includes Legacy. And I played a league with this deck the other day. This is definitely early in the brewing stages. I'm still trying to figure out what we are missing, what we want, and what we can change in order to make room for that. And this is a list that I put together, and I basically played two leagues. First league I went 3-2 with, and the second one I actually 5-0'd with. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to first of all share with you the deck list, and then I will go over the games from that league, and we will analyze some gameplay and stuff. So what we have here is good old trusty Maverick, Knight of the Reliquary, Green Sun Zenith. I'm playing a split between Noble Hierarch and Birds of Paradise, and I'm doing 3 Mother of Runes and 1 Giver of Runes. This is mostly because of Plague Engineer. Plague Engineer is just a very popular card, and I'm trying to make sure that I minimize the effect of the card the best that I can. And we're playing for Thalia. So I think that Thalia right now it's actually in a great spot. We actually have two Stoneforge Mystics with the only 2 pieces of equipment. I don't think that other piece of equipment is particularly necessary. I could see adding Batter Skull, but in the past I have run the Sword of Light and Shadow. I don't think that the sword is particularly good right now, and overall, just equipment because of the fact that Oko is everywhere. Just equipment has become significantly worse. So yeah, I'm not so hot on equipment, but GT is still very important, and it actually did come up in one of the matchups that we're going to see later. Right now, we have the one-off of Scavenging Ooze, Script Ranger, the best card in the deck, Seal and Library, and Gaddock Teague. Gaddock Teague is basically just like an auto win against Storm, and very important against Miracles and decks like that. The one of Raminap. I have played with this card in the past, and I have also played without it. I think this card is actually pretty great. Tracker, it's an absolute beast, and one of main deck, Knight of Autumn. Um, the sideboard is pretty the land base, sorry, it's pretty straightforward. I basically use the mana base that I've been using in the past. We only added 1 Tundra and 1 Trop, and we're only playing 2 basic forest and 1 basic plains. We have the one of Cradle. This card is actually quite important in my opinion in Maverick, so I always want to make sure that I have room for the one of Cradle. And then 1 Canopy, 1 Caracas, and the full 4 copies of Wasteland. Obviously, the rest is just fetch lands to make sure that we hit our mana and we're able to cast our spells whenever we need to. The sideboard is definitely experimental for now. I am running a third copy of Oko, the Quasari Pride Mage. This card is actually kind of awesome, and I wish that I had room in the main deck, but like one of these Oko is actually taking the room that the Quasari Pride Mage would be using. 3 Veil of Summer, this card is pretty absurd, so no surprises there. I've been quite happy with the 3 copies. I could see going down to 2, but it has been fine. Vivian, this card is just like a card that I enjoy playing with a lot. I don't know if it's great. Maybe this should be like a Gideon ally of Zendikar or something like that, just like a more robust threat. But I don't know, just the card is a lot of fun and I enjoy playing with it, so that's why it's here. 3 copies of Surgical, 1 Fluster Storm. Yes, we have blue mana, so we can play counter magic, right? Exciting. A couple of Canonists again against Storm and like all sorts of decks that play many spells in the same turn, and a couple of Council Judgments to deal with like True Name Nemesis and stuff like that. This is literally the only 2 answers that we have to the True Name. The other answer is to just raise it, which is sometimes not easy. Though Sword of Fire and Ice does a good job at that, but still, these are our only True Name answers. And a one of Sanctum Prelate. This is very important against decks like Miracles, Storm, and stuff like that. So this is the deck. We're gonna go on to check out the matches, and I'll see you over there. All right, we're ready to go. This is game number 1. I choose to keep this hand on the blind, obviously. We have interaction for the first couple of turns, so we also have turn to Thalia with ways to protect it thanks to the Caracas. So with the Knight, it just felt like a great hand. We're paired against Burn. I see what my deck, the top of my deck reveals, Knight of the Reliquary, and I of course just I don't want to take damage from the Globing Guy, so I just swords it. I think that's pretty straightforward. Here, Thalia is gonna start doing some serious work. First of all, my opponent spends the turn to play an Eidolon, which is kind of a big deal. I take two to play a Knight, and I choose to not attack here. I could have chosen to um, to play the to just try to race, just attack the Thalia. Opponent is obviously not going to block, and they just try to race. But I have like Swords to Plowshares in hand. I feel pretty advantaged. And here I played a 3/3, and my opponent is using a Bolt to kill it. So I am feeling that as long as I don't go too low on damage, I'm gonna be in a good spot. So my opponent bolts the Knight, which sucks, but I mean, what can I really do, right? I'm gonna make the same play again and not attack. Again, I'm trying to prolong the game. Opponent uses another lightning bolt on my Naruto Reliquary, which is it's kind of great. Here we're gonna play the Stoneforge, and I'm gonna get GTA obviously because it gains life, and we're still in the same plan, right? I'm just trying to make sure that I can stay alive basically. My opponent goes ahead and they use the fact that I was tapped out of Wasteland, and they just main phase it Price of Progress, dealing 8 damage, which is a ton. But now this allows me to attack with and to connect with Jite, which is going to gain me a couple of life. Here I choose to take the 1 damage because it protects me from another Price of Progress. So we're gonna get GT counters. We're going up to 9. We're at a virtual 9 life right now. My opponent is going to attack with the Eidolon, nothing I can do there, and I just died to Fire Blast plus Bolt, but there's nothing really that I can do about it, so they just Lava Spike me, and they just had the Fire Blast. Pay for the Thalia attacks, and I die. So, it's kind of sad, but well, we're moving on to game 2. So we're looking here for game 2. I sideboarded in Quasali Pride Mage, Oko, Flusterstorm, and Sanctum Prelates. I'm not very sure about my sideboarding. I now that I think about it, I think I would have made some other changes. But this is the way that I sideboarded, and we're taking out Tireless Tracker, Knight of the Reliquary, Raminap Excavator, and Sylvan Library. So those are the changes that we made for game 2, and we're met with a great hand. We're met with a great hand. We're gonna be able to turn 1 a Noble Hierarch off of a Misty Rainforest because I want to make sure that I can leave myself the possibility of drawing another fetch land in order to play a 4/4 Knight on turn 2. So we're gonna get a basic forest, play an over hierarch, pass. Opponent goes with Goblin Guide on turn 1, revealing a wasteland, and then we untap and we draw Oko. And this is kind of absurd. Check it out. So we play Oko right there. We make a food, so we have virtually gained 3 life. Now my opponent is going to attack the Oko, down to 4, and then they're gonna Fire Blast the Oko away. So I effectively double time walked my opponent. I took 2 of their lands. I gain 3 life, and I'd also gain 6 more. So 9 life total because my opponent needed to make sure that they killed the Oko right then and there. Otherwise, they were going to have problems. So this turn, I have a couple of options here. I considered going for Thalia plus Zenith for 1, but I realized that my opponent is just like so far behind, and my cards are so much better than my opponent's, that if I use this turn to clear the Eidolon, and then on my next turn I play Thalia plus Knight, there's basically no way that my opponent is going to be able to win. I end up going for the Thalia though in order to prevent the lockout, but it's definitely interesting for the choice that I made there. Here we're going to Knight of Autumn away the Eidolon, and at this point the game is basically over. They can attack with the Goblin Guide. I will happily trade for the Knight of Autumn. That's fine. Here we play Knight, and then on my following turn I'm going to be able to go get yeah, they are basically forced to Riftbolt the Thalia because otherwise they just can't cast their spells. And I just draw the second Oko here and it's over. I mean, it was already pretty over because I was going to play a sword and then I was going to just like start just drawing cards with a protection from Red Knight of the Reliquary. So I don't think my opponent was gonna come back from this anyway, but like Oko was like a nice way to clean things up right there and make sure that we finish that easy. And now on to game 3. Same sideboarding, and we have again the turn to Oko. This is just nuts. Opponent goes with the thing. We even find the basics, so now we can play around Price of Progress very effectively. So turn one Noble Hierarch is just perfect. My opponent chain line is the Noble Hierarch. I'm not sure that was a correct play. Like, it's a little bit sketchy. Here, I'm basically just throwing the Scavenging Ooze under the bus, because if my opponent uses a Lightning Bolt here and I manage to like untap and play Oko, the game is basically just over. I could have also seen just like played my land and spend the turn simply to plowshare, sort of plowshare the Monastery Swift Spear, but then that might be problematic if my opponent has an Eidolon or something. So I'm just throwing the Scavenging Ooze under the bus because the Yoko is going to be the big prize here, right? Pyrostatic Pillar, so that's basically Eidolon on an enchantment. Nothing too crazy. So here we cast the Yoko, and we're going to make a food, and yeah. Opponent reps, but it doesn't really matter because we already have the food. Opponent go face, I'm gonna chomp here because I don't want to be dead to Lightning Bolt. We're fine against Fire. We're dead to Fire Blast anyway. So here I'm kind of forced into just like going get Night of Autumn, and I don't think I can afford to get the Pyrostatic Pillar because I would just die to any burn spell. So I think I just need to gain 4 there, unfortunately. Opponent uses a pop for 2, which I'm not sure it's correct. I guess it depends on what the rest of their deck looks like. And here I'm just gonna chomp the Swift Spear. And we've gone into a very awkward spot. I get to gain life, but I'm gonna take 3. I'm gonna take 4 from for casting this Night of the Reliquary. It's gonna be a 6/6, which is nice. So here I'm trying to get on the racing plan. I'm not going to be able to cast any spells from the rest of the game, but so does my opponent is not going to be able to cast spells for the rest of the game either. They can only cast Fire Blast, and I can only cast Crimson Zenith, basically. So I decide to attack because if my opponent take... Basically, I need to race, right? And I have only 2 turns to get this done. So I need my opponent to whiff. By attacking here, my opponent is going to go down to 5, so they're going to be able to cast only 1 more spell, and that spell needs to be either a 3 mana burn spell or a Fire Blast. Obviously, Fire Blast is the best thing that they can draw, and or I am opening myself up to then drawing a Goblin Guide by making this attack, but at the same time I am locking them out of drawing something like an Eidolon or something like that. So they need to find a hasty threat, and it cannot be Monastery Swift Spear. So I think that making this attack is correct. We need to race. We're not going to win the long game, and I need to make sure that I take the most draw spells from my opponent as possible. So here my opponent chumps because they want to stay at 11. That's fine, and they do draw an Eidolon. So this basically is a chump block right here. So opponent chump blocks there, and I get lucky enough that I draw a Zenith, which is going to allow me to play Gadoctic, which locks Fire Blast as an out for my opponent, and now it also presents lethal. So by getting the Gadoctic, I basically lock my opponent out because next turn there's just no spells. They basically need to draw exactly a bolt in that turn, or they just lose. So yeah, and maybe I should have gotten something else, but I think that getting the Gadoctic there to lock them out of Fire Blast is the correct line. But yeah, my opponent doesn't draw it, and we attack for lethal, and they die. Neither Aquaria being a 6/6, pretty relevant. All right, I will see you for the next game. Here we're back for game 2, for match 2 actually. So here I keep this is kind of gritty, but I think it's fine. Basically, we have turn 1 Zenith for Arbor into turn 2 Neither of the Reliquary. Unless my opponent has exactly Lightning Bolt or something like that, we're gonna be in a really good spot. Here, my opponent does have a Thoughtseize on 1, and we just play a Mom. And this is something that when I saw my opponent going turn 1 basic Swamp into Thoughtseize, basically what that means to me is either Black-Green Depths or Storm. And it doesn't matter which one of the matchups it is, I need to start getting in there. So I wanted to make sure that I protected, that I played Mom. so I can protect my stuff from abrupt decay. But now that I saw that on turn two my opponent played a basic island, I'm actually gonna switch gears, and I would have been much happier if I had played the Raminab Excavator on turn two, just because it clocks a little bit faster. But yeah, now that I know that my opponent is on Storm, the Mom is actually gonna get in there, and I'm gonna start trying to make my opponents ad nauseam as bad as possible. There's nothing that I'm trying to play around here. I'm just like trying to race as quickly as possible. That Stoneforge draw is actually pretty good because it's a very quick clock. Because basically now my opponent is, yeah, just like the sword there basically means that ad nauseam is just not an out for my opponent. They just need to kill me somehow, and they need to naturally combo. And as you can see, they whiffed, and they just concede, and we win game one pretty easily, even through double Thoughtseize and stuff. It's just like my opponent's deck didn't particularly function very well, and we were able to punish them for stumbling. All right, going into game two, we actually sideboarded Taunt against Storm. So basically, we are bringing in Sanctum Prelate, two Canonist, Flusterstorm, two Surgicals, three Veils of Summer, and one Kasali Pride Mage. And we're taking out two Stoneforges, four Swords to Plowshares, one Tireless Tracker, one Raminap, one Sylvan Library, and one Knight of the Reliquary. So yeah, we're changing the deck a fair amount. So we're met with this opener. I think that it's a fine keep. Considering my opponent is not likely to have many removal spells, it's pretty reliable. I'm pretty sure that the Noble Hierarch is going to survive. Basically, my opponent does have the yeah. This is actually a great draw. Bale of Summer is particularly excellent against Storm. Not only blanks all of their Discord spell and their removal, their Feather pushes and stuff, but it also is very, very good at just stopping their win condition outright. They cannot Tendrils you when you have a Veil of Summer on the stack. Well, you have Resolve Veil of Summer basically. All their copies of Tendrils are going to whiff. So that's definitely a great draw. It's going to be basically a one mana Cryptic Command, which we're going to cash in right there in front of that Thoughtseize. So now we're able to Wasteland and Thalia my opponent. Like my draws here have been very, very good. And you will see that I'm actually holding up Mom here. I am very concerned at this point because I don't know if my opponent is playing Massacre. The fact that that's the reason why I went so aggressively out after my opponent's Underground Sea instead of their Green Source. I don't know if my opponent's playing Massacre or Dread of Night, and either one of those would be pretty problematic, particularly Massacre because it's going to kill my Noble Hierarchs as well. So I'm just trying to make sure that Thalia locks my opponent out as soon as possible. And I am very interested. You're going to see that I'm going to deploy the Knight in this coming turn because I want to make sure that I sacrifice my Savannah as early as possible to not get massacred. It's also nice that the Knight of the Reliquary also survives the massacre. But yeah, the fact that I cannot present lethal here, I'm just basically looking at my opponent at this point. I sack they're only out. I sack my Savannah, so they can't massacre me, and now I have Gadok in play protected by Mom. This is just too much for my opponent to keep up with, and they just concede. So yeah, 2-0. On to the next match. All right, we're here for match 3. 2-0 so far in this league, and we're met with another Thalia hand. And my opponent goes turn 1 Zenith. At this point, my heart kind of sinks a little bit because it could be Elves. Elves, historically, an awful matchup for Maverick. And yeah, exactly, my opponent is playing Elves. So they attack with the Arbor. Obviously, I don't block. This one damage is not going to be relevant. Either my opponent super kills me or they kind of kill me. And here I just try to deny my opponent mana. So I go ahead and I Wasteland them. I'm trying to stay ahead of mana from my opponent. So I Wasteland their Dryad Arbor and I Source to Plowshares their Wirewood Symbiotes to make sure that they have the least amount of possible plays available to them. And then I'm trying to set up a turn where I definitely want to make sure that I play Jite and I activate it immediately because I don't want my opponent to be able to have a Rex Sage. So I definitely do not want to play out the Jite, even though I'm going to have the possibility to do so. So I can get ahead of mana by playing Noble Hierarch, even though I'm wastelanding my opponent. And we get very rewarded here. My opponent plays Scavenge Genius, that's fine. I could have played Jite into Thalia, but I choose to just getting there for 1 point of damage. That's fine. The use gets a little bit bigger, and my opponent plays out the Rex Age, and you see why I made the plays that I made, right? So now I'm able to just blow my opponent out of the waters right here. Just hard cast the GT, equip onto the Thalia, and I can attack. I can attack safely. My opponent says, "Well, I have good timing." They get immediately blown out by the GT. Of course, I'm going after the mana immediately. I want to make sure that I don't get like randomly comboed out. In fact, I should have probably gone after the Sage there. I wanted to be a little bit greedier and try to make sure that I can tag like a symbiote or something. But I think that maybe, yeah, going after that was just straight up going after the Sage would have been better. I think I could have double suited up the with the Sword of Fire and Ice, but it just like at this point we're just so far ahead. The one of Scavenging Ooze is not going to be enough to stop my GT now that my the thing is done. And here my opponent makes a key mistake. So they attack with the Scavenging Ooze. I take it. And now next turn I'm able to like cradle. Now I can attack with Sophie. I'm going to equip the Sophie to the Thalia. Maybe this was a mistake after thinking about it afterwards. What I should have done is I should have equipped the. I basically wanted to make sure that I don't get killed by the scavenging, so I have enough chump bloggers. But I'm going to have enough chump bloggers anyway with these two guys. So what I should have done is I should have equipped the Script Ranger with the sword, and this way I get to draw another card. I get to kill one of these guys for free, and I get to maximize the amount of GT counters that I'm left with afterwards. So my opponent is going to chump here, and I'm going to end up with two GT counters, but I'm going to use one of those GT counters to kill that guy. And here I counted and counted again and recounted again because my opponent is going to attack with the Scavenging Ooze, and they're gonna get completely blown away by Script Ranger, which is the best card in the deck. I untap the Thalia, block. I counted 3 times that I had only 2 dudes. There's only 2 creatures total, and there's no way my opponent can put more. So I just grow the Thalia, and I am protected from the Scavenging Ooze, and then I just ping the rest of their guys with Umisawa's GT, and the GT just takes over. It's just so good in this matchup, and my opponent, like, I was able to leverage it properly because my opponent did not have access to Rex Age anymore because of how I sequence my cards. So that is something that I always try to be careful with. I never expose the GT until at least I get one activation from it. So yeah, let's move on to game two. Here we are for game two against Elves. The cards that I brought in are Sanctum Prelate, 2 Council's Judgment, 2 Ethersworn Canonist, and one of the remaining Oko, the third copy. And I'm taking out 4 Thalias, 1 of Excavator, and 1 Knight of Autumn. The Council's Judgment is mostly there because of Progenitus. That card is kind of a big deal, and if your opponent is able to, out of a very low base, able to natural order for a Progenitus, you're gonna really struggle to beat it otherwise. So I like to make sure that I have a couple of answers for Progenitus for in post Cyber the games. Sanctum Prelate is there to be named on either 2 or 4. 4 for Natural Order and 2 for Abrupt Decay and Assassin's Trophy, which Elves players often play. In fact, Abrupt Decay and Assassin's Trophy were one of the reasons why I was considering bringing in Veil of Summer. I ended up choosing to not bring this in. I don't think that my opponent is going to have Thoughtseize against me, so I don't think that I want to have Veil. Like, for example, if I were playing Storm or something like that, where I know that my Elves opponent is going to bring in Thoughtseize, I think I would bring in Veil of Summer if I had it in my sideboard. But coming from the Maverick deck, I don't think that bringing Veil is correct. But yeah, let's see how game two goes. So we shipped it. We ship a very bad hand, and then game two we have on the 6 we have turn 1 Mom, turn 2 there's one Canonist, into turn 3 Knight of the Reliquary. It's not a great hand, but it's hopefully a serviceable hand. Unfortunately for me, my opponent kind of goes off here with Glimpse in Rangers plus double Net of Sentinel. So like anything that I get to do is just it's just not important, right? Like my opponent just gets so much card advantage and they just go so wide on this board that it just doesn't matter. Like I just don't really get to do anything. They also just put a second main phase hoof into play, which is hilarious, and they decay my mom for good measure. And yeah, I just cannot beat what my opponent's doing, so we just pack it in. Not the most exciting game too, but I mean that's Elves for you, right? Like this is why Elves is such a good matchup for Maverick, which is that no, we don't really have good interaction. So now let's go into game three. So now we get to be on the play, and we're gonna get to turn two Oko, and this was kind of like a test. I wasn't sure whether this was actually gonna be good or not, so let's see what happens. I choose to go on turn two for like my opponent had a Bayou, so I choose to like go for the mana denial plan again. With Heritage Druid, there's only one card that I care about them playing, which is Birchlower Rangers. That's the only way that they can kind of go off. But out of such a low base, I don't think that my opponent can go off on this next turn if I wasteland them. So getting the library into play as early as possible seems important, and also it delays. Basically, it delays the decision of what to do with Isoko. Because if they have a second Heritage Druid, of course, I don't want to make their first Druid a 3/3, right? So they attack with Heritage Druid and pass the turn. So we see Jite, which we're happy to see, and then we see Stoneforge and Birds. I choose to go for the Stoneforge, and I'm trying to use this as a development turn. Maybe that was a little bit greedy. I think it was fine. Like I feel like I need to get a little bit lucky and my opponent to not have it in order to win this game, because I don't think I'm gonna be able to just outvalue them, right? So I need to get a little bit lucky and just take one turn to set up and just make sure that I can at least get a little bit of value out of this Jite. My opponent goes off a tiny bit. They don't really like full on go off. They kind of go off. There they did like the thing for three. I have no idea why, but yeah, whatever. So they get a Scavenging Ooze, which I'm not too worried about. That is actually an incredible draw. So this is going to allow me to kind of take over a little bit, and I also find a Cradle, which allows me to do everything that I want to do. So that was definitely like actually I'm getting extremely rewarded by that turn to a Sylvan Library right there. And you see that I'm actually trading with this Scavenging Ooze. I have the Swords to Plowshare still in hand, so I I could have had even the second swords, but I'm like, maybe it's better for me to just make sure that I don't get killed by a big Scavenging Ooze or something. So I use one of the GT counters to kill the Scavenging Ooze, the other GT counter to kill the Heritage Druid, which is my opponent's mana source. And here I think I actually swords the Creon Ranger or something. No, I did not. Okay, that's fine. Maybe I feel like I should have sworded the Creon Ranger there. They don't attack with Nettle Sentinel, which is interesting. So they're clearly holding up Abrupt Decay. Like there's really no question there. It's basically just face up. So I attack first because I know that they're gonna decay there, and this means that the Oko is just free to do whatever he wants. So now we sword the Queer Ranger, which again I should have sorted on the previous turn. We wasteland, and now Oko starts doing the Oko thing. So we start getting food. That's gonna be an elk soon enough. Opponent decides to go face, which is kind of like a losing proposition considering there's a food right here, but I mean, what are they supposed to do, right? We find another source of plowshares. We got super lucky this game. I go down to two just like kind of because I can. I'm just making a bunch of food. I have like a Queer Ranger, and like this library just doing absurd amounts of work. So I want to make sure that I gain some life here and step, so I can keep doing the Sylvan Library thing. I've drawn so many cards off of this library at this point. So we see Prelate, and Knight, and a land. We Oko the Dry Arbor again. I'm definitely on the mana denial plan right over here. And I'm going to Prelate on 4 to make sure that I don't get like randomly killed by a natural order. And at this point, I don't think my opponent has any outs. This doesn't tap for mana, so they can't even like replay their Visionary and stuff. That's going to be another Elk soon enough. We have second Oko, yeah. That's an elk. We just play second Oko because it doesn't matter. Like the fact that the first one was at 10 loyalty just doesn't really matter. I mean, it's just unkillable anyway. So here we're going to just grow the knight a little bit, and I wanted to shuffle the top of my deck since I know that I have a blank, a couple of blanks actually. I had two lands, so it's kind of free to on the attack untap the knight and do some fetching. And yeah, my opponent just gives up because Oko is just blanking all of their cards. This was actually a good showing for the deck. We were definitely very lucky. We drew three Swords to Plowshares, but I want to point out like how important that this Civil Library that I played on turn two ended up being. Like it fixed my draws. It drew me an incredible amount of cards, and it just made sure that I was able to keep up with what my opponent was doing. Actually, fairly easy. The fact that my opponent decayed my Jite didn't even matter because I was just drawing so many cards and I was like blanking. I was just basically removing all of my opponent's creatures with the Oko, so they eventually just gave up, and we are 3-0. All right, currently 3-0. Sorry, in this Legacy League with Bant Maverick. We are again greeted with a beautiful hand. Turn one Noble Hierarch. Turn two we can play like Zenith for Arbor into stuff, or we can simply just I think we're gonna library and Zenith for Arbor, just making sure that we're super ahead both on mana and on cards. My opponent's playing turn two Oko, they make a food. It just doesn't matter. Um, we're gonna play an elk. um, Scrib Ranger protection for blue, very relevant. We deal two to the Oko, and we're basically playing the Oko game. We're playing against the deck that ended up going second. It's like a bug Oko deck with Leovold. Seeing Leovold over there, of course, does not make me very happy when I have a library, but you know, it's on top of the deck, it's not in play, so I know that they're drawing a Leo, so I want to try to make sure that I have an out to that. So we take four from this. Opponent shuffles the Leo away, which really surprises me. But yeah, so they seen it for Arbor, and this is the key part. In this turn I'm able to deal four to them. I kill the Noble Hierarch, and basically I'm forcing my opponent to answer the Sword of Fire and Ice on the same turn that I'm forcing them to answer the Mom. So they basically need to draw a removal spell, or they're just going to basically get blown away by this Mom. So they put a Wasteland in play with the Cursor, they destroy my Caracas, all this stuff kind of like doesn't really matter much. They do find a Leobold thanks to the Zenith, which is a big problem because of the Civil Library, so now this doesn't do anything anymore. But I am gonna get to untap with Mom, which just opens up so many lines for me. So we're about to see that. Draw Thalia, which is not great, but it's fine. Knight of Autumn destroys the Cursor. They get to draw a Quaddle, but it's kind of whatever. So now we actually get to attack the Oko. We trade things, we give it pro green, and like now Scrib Ranger again. Like Scrib Ranger is just so good in Maverick. It's kind of insane. You see how my opponent gets blown out by the Scrib Ranger. They plus the Oko on the Mom, and then I just untap the Mom with Scrib Ranger, and I'm able to give it its herself protection from green. And this makes sure that I cannot, like, my opponent does not have decay mana up right now, and I make sure that they cannot decay it until the end of turn. So that's why I give it protection from green instead of from blue. And I know that they have a Quaddle and like a bunch of other things. They have a Questing Beast, which it's gonna deal like a bunch of damage here. I actually trade with the Leo. I was super surprised when my opponent did this. I think this is actually a terrible trade for my opponent. I have no idea what they were thinking. Because now this unlocks my Sylvan library, which is kind of a massive deal. So yeah, I mean that just happened somehow. So library gets unlocked. Now I get to attack for four, which is nice because the questing beast can't block this for free. So we swing for four. The Yoko is gonna take it down to two. We're gonna be able to knight plus Thalia here, which is great. Uh, they elk their own Dried Arbor, which I don't think it's a great play, but I guess they're kind of desperate here. Yeah, they just like they realize that because I have double Mom activation, so they can't even attack into my stuff because I just block here, I just give it pro, and then I can just like untap this sort of Fire and Ice and trade. So it's just like it's not a good deal for my opponent. So at this point, just like the library just gonna take over. Like I'm very surprised that they unlocked my library. That kind of made no sense to me. Yeah, so I was thinking that they might be holding up force, but then they ended up playing a Icefang Quaddle there. And I guess they drew into the force because otherwise it would have been way better for them to just like hard cast it because they ended up pitching a second force. They pitch a second force? Weird. I have no idea why they played the Ice Fang first then. No idea. Here I gave my thing protection in order to swing, but then I had a free land drop, so it was basically free with the Script Ranger. I ended up with an attack mom anyway. So Zenith for 1 for Gilded Goose. Opponent's trying to stabilize somehow. But like mom, basically mom just took over this game. It's kind of crazy how that ended up working out. We cycle Canopy and we source to Plowshares the 4/4, and now with 2 knights in play, there's just like nothing that my opponent can really do. I am going to sack the Dry Diver away because I don't want to for it to be susceptible to removal. And now I just have 2/8/8 knights, an untapped mom, and like yeah, this is just we're too far ahead here. Also, Script Ranger is just like chomp. It just blocks Ice Fang all day. It's hilarious. Yeah, so now we just give both of them pro green. My opponent has 1 card in hand. I know it's not a removal spell, otherwise they would have used it a while ago. And they just have nothing. They're drawing an Oko, which is pretty much irrelevant. They're making a food end step here. They just tapped their mana wrong. So they make a food, and we have 3 knights with our reliquary now, which is this is just unbeatable. Have an Oko in hand. They shuffle away the other the Leo Ball that they had in the top. Just Leo's not good enough anymore now, and we are just easily outgrinding. Yeah, that play engineer is just simply too late. At this point, I have 3 Knight of the Reliquary, and I'm drawing a Source to Plowshares, and yeah, just swinging for a million. So yeah, we just basically outground the grindiest deck in Legacy, or one of the grindiest decks in Legacy. Just filled with value. It just didn't matter. We just ground them down to the ground with Knights of the Reliquary. So yeah, so let's go to game 2. All right, for game 2, we are sideboarding in. We're bringing in the Oko. We're going to bring in 3 Veil of Summer. We're bringing in Vivian and the 2 Council's Judgment. And what we're taking out is 1 Mom, 4 Thalias, 1 Galactic, and 1 Greenson Zenith. The reason for taking out this is because I think my opponent is playing 3 Plague Engineers, so I'm trying to minimize the effect of that stupid card because like that card is just absurd. So I'm trying to take out all my human X ones, or like a bunch of them. We're still left with a bunch of moms and a couple of moms and all the 2 noble hierarchs, but definitely the split of birds and noble hierarch coming in clutch in this matchup. So we're left with a we're moving on to 5 after seeing some very awkward mana bases. My opponent shows me Mixstone, which really surprises me. This does not seem like a great card. And there I make a pretty bad mistake. I led on Savannah and I exposed myself to Wasteland. I was not sure whether my opponent was playing Wasteland. The list that got second at the GP was, but I had not seen Wasteland at all. I guess I did see Wasteland in game 1 actually. So yeah, so that was just a mistake, and I should have led on the fetch line in order to protect myself from Wasteland. And then we drew a library, and which is kind of a blowout. We do, however, find this, but like if my opponent has a Leobold now, we're gonna be in a lot of trouble. And they have Oko, they don't have Leobolds. Just turn the Meekstone into a thing, which is hilarious. So now I'm trying to get ahead on to kind of get back to parity on mana. My opponent missed a land drop on the previous turn, so I try to like wasteland them while I use Hierarch to get ahead on mana. So I'm trying to like get back to parity. But my opponent does find the land because like library is the only thing that's keeping me into this game. So I wanted to try to make sure that they are not able to cast a Leovold. Then they did draw land, so if they have Leo, they can cast it now. They have Plague Engineer, which is even worse. So I don't have mana anymore. This is just terrible. I have to shuffle the top cards, and it's just like this game is just over. I can't win. Like my opponent is just too far ahead at this point. But I'm just trying to gather information about how my opponent sideboarded and stuff. But yeah, we're simply just dead. Moving on to game 3. We again ship a first hand that could not really cast spells. Dry Dabber was my only green source, which is terrible. And then we're left with this hand. I don't love this hand. Like I think this hand is pretty bad, but I think like we actually like whatever we do is going to be protected most likely. So I think that this a hand like this has actually a good amount of potential. So I choose to go on turn one exactly, and you're gonna see that I fetched on purpose. I had basics, right? I had multiple basics, but I'm kind of flooded. So one of the ways that I can get ahead is if my opponent does exactly what happened and they try to cheese me out. Instead of them developing their mana, they try to cheese me out of my mana. And because I had a bunch of lands in hand, this is actually exactly what I want to happen. Like I want the game to go longer. I don't want my opponent to get ahead of board. And now they wasteland me while they were actually behind on board, and I can capitalize on that. So we play Giver of Runes here. Now both of our runes givers and stuff are protected, and we play GT, which is not great, but it is something. I assume that my opponent does have lands, otherwise they would have not just like wastelanded me so aggressively, but it's fine. So now here we keep equip GT and we kind of go see what happens. Opponent does have the abrupt decay, so they take care of the GT, but like we still getting there for one. We're not drawing great, but again, like there's a lot of things that can go good. They can go pretty well for us here. Opponent goes for Oko and I fetch for Dry Diver because I need some. I need to try to clock the Oko. And here we actually go for Tracker because I still have one land left in hand, and I know that this like they will need like triple removal spell to deal with this Tracker, or like even if they have the the plague engineer, they can only kill the mom, they still cannot kill the tracker, and then the giver can protect it from the Yoko. So I know that I'm going to untap with this tracker, and I this is the way that I am expecting to try to get ahead. Opponent plays land, they brainstorm, and then they do play a cursor instead of plague engineer, which is much better for me because now I can safely attack the Yoko. And I think they missed an Oko activation if I'm not mistaken there. And here we're going to start drawing cards like crazy with Tireless Tracker, and we're going to be able to get a ton of value this way. We're drawing terribly, but like we're still in a good spot. So they make the food into a 3/3, which is pretty irrelevant, and they seen it for Leo here, which is kind of annoying because of the tracker. But fortunately, we were like champions and we drew the Caracas, so I attack to see if my opponent wants to trade. They don't. I just give it pro green so I can clear. Actually, yeah, actually there I just gave it pro green. I know that I used the mom. I know that this exposes me to abrupt decay on the giver of runes, but I think it's correct for me to like play around plague engineer because giver of runes is not what's winning this game. The tracker is what's winning this game. And now that I'm going to be able to bounce the Leo with Caracas, I'm going to start to be able to gather a ton of value from this tracker. So I want to make sure that this tracker survives because this is my path to victory. So if they have a plague engineer and a removal spell, and I leave the mom untapped, they actually get the upper hand on me. By leaving the giver untapped, I am the one that has the upper hand. So I think that it was correct for me to leave the giver untapped instead of the mom. So here on the end step, I'm going to bounce the Oko with Caracas, and I'm going to draw a couple of cards. I'm going to draw two more cards on my following turn. My opponent's going to get to draw a card here, but like it's fine. Like I know what they're drawing. They're drawing a Gilded Goose, which is not particularly relevant. And I know that next turn is also a blank draw because it's another Leobold. Yeah, and my opponent realizes that they are like this tracker is just taking over, and thanks to the mom. So we see like the importance of both like mom and giver of runes in this matchup. Both games that I won was basically because just on the back of both of these cards. In this kind of like mid-rangey matchups that don't play cards like Terminus and stuff, because I'm pretty sure that this list plays like a single Deluge or something. Um, just like Mother of Runes and Giver of Runes are just so important. Like you're always going to trade in mana, and you're able to like protect your plan and just like do whatever you want basically. So we see how like my very sketchy keep was basically just one zenith away from just basically winning the game on its own because of Tireless Tracker. But yeah, we're currently 4-0. We're gonna go ahead and check out the very last match. And here we are for the final round. Match number 5. We keep kind of a sketcher, honestly, but like every time I have Dry Diver in my opener, I always like think a little bit before actually going ahead and keeping the hand. But this hand is robust enough that like we do have 3 mana on turn 2, and we also have like both Stoneforge and Scavenging Ooze, so I'm feeling pretty confident about this hand. This is fine. So my opponent goes basic Swamp into Duress, and they whiff. And this is like the same thing that we saw earlier. Like there's two decks that play Duress, and one two, let's say there's two played decks that play Duress in the main deck, and those are Storm, that more commonly Ant, either Ant or TES, or Black Green Depths sometimes plays Duress in the main deck. So I'm like, I drew the Green Sun Zenith, and I'm like, there's pretty much a 50-50% chance here. If I Zenith for Teague right now and I'm playing against Storm, I basically win on turn 2. And if I'm playing against Black Green Depths, I I'm kind of screwed, but but yeah. So basically, I'm rolling the dice here because definitely if I were playing against depths, I would definitely be Zenithing for Scrive Ranger instead. But yeah, so I'm trying to, like, there's a 50-50 chance against TES. Galactic is okay, but it's not game over by any means. It basically stops like their big engines, but they can still do like their medium stuff basically. So they can still like chain rituals and grape shot you for a bunch, but they cannot past in flames and like tendrils you, or empty you for that matter while T is in play. So like it's still decent against TS, but it's not game over. It is actually game over against Ant. So I think that it's worth going for it. So I turn to Gadok Teague, and I see that my opponent plays a basic island, and I get a sigh of relief because that basically means GG. Opponent brainstorms looking for I don't know what, and then immediately concedes because they are dead to the Galactic. This is one of the reasons why I don't think I would ever play Green Sun Zenith deck without the main deck Galactic. Like, it's just so important in some matchups. Like against Miracle, same thing. If you are able to get Mom plus Teague going at any point, basically you can do whatever the hell you want and your opponent can never keep up with you. So I think that T is really really important, and I always want to make sure that I have at least one copy of Teague in my main deck. And sometimes if I don't think that it's good enough for the main deck, at least I will play one copy in the sideboard. But yeah, it's just too good to not play. So let's move on to the sideboard again. So this is game 2 against Storm. As I shared my sideboarding earlier, we're talking about bringing in a Kasali Pride Mage, 3 Veil of Summers, 2 Surgicals, Flaster Storm, double Canonist, Sanctum Prelate, and here I changed one little thing. I added another Council's Judgment to the main deck over one Knight of the Reliquary. And the reason for this is because of things like Dread of Night, and maybe my opponent, when they know that I'm playing a Thalia deck, they will play out LEDs and stuff preemptively. But that's not really what the judgment is there for. It's basically as an extra answer to something like Dread of Night. So yeah, let's go ahead and see. We had a seven with 5 lands, a Noble Hierarch, and a Veil of Summer. I actually considered it, but it ended up just saying, nah, we can do better. And we did do better, because this is, we have a Wasteland, we have turn 1 Zenith if we need to, or we can try to hold and try to use this Zenith to get something better. And you see, opponent actually does play Lionside Diamond out. So here I'm hoping to get a little bit lucky, but I think it's still correct to do what I did here. And I played a turn 2 Oko, and I turned the LED into an elk. I don't know how important this was, but it definitely feels like it wasn't irrelevant. I wasted my opponent's Volk, make a food, pass the turn again to my opponent, holding a Veil of Summer and Scrive Ranger. Opponent plays a bunch of stuff and Dark Rituals and Infernal Tutors, and like they do some stuff and they pass in flames and they do things and Infernal Tutor only with 3 mana left, and they Cabal Ritual and they Infernal Tutor again only with 4 mana left this time, and they Tendrils and I Veil of Summer and I win. This card is pretty silly. This card is pretty silly. Um, it is crazy how absurd this card is against Storm, and we just saw it in action. I wonder what would have happened if I had not elked the LED, because on that turn I actually just tapped out. So it is actually quite possible that not elking the LED would have allowed my opponent to go off the previous turn when I was not able to hold up Veil of Summer because I hadn't drawn it yet, right? So I think that that Oko in there, even though it's not a card that I would consider to be good in the matchup by any means, it was oddly very relevant, and I think that it's a big reason why I ended up winning that match, and we got the 5-0. Hooray! Well, thank you so much for watching this video. Hope you enjoyed the playthrough, run through, I guess, through those matches of Legacy. I think that the banning of Ren and Six has really opened up the floodgates, and it's the first time that I'm actually having legit fun in Legacy for the past like 6 months or something. It really is great. The only problem that Legacy might have is if this card might prove to be a little bit too much. So time will tell what ends up happening. But yeah, I hope that Legacy remains sweet, and that I can continue winning by casting cards like Knight of the Reliquary, Mother of Runes, and Thalia Warden of Traven. I will see you in the next video or my next stream. Have an amazing rest of your day. Bye bye.